There are so many rapture theories and predictions floating around the internet these days, especially right now. And very often people base much of their views on Matthew 24, which is Jesus' end times discourse. They try to pinpoint certain end times events, like the rapture, by looking for cosmic signs in the sky, such as blood moons, solar eclipses, lunar eclipses, and other celestial phenomenon. But what if Jesus is not talking about what we think he is in Matthew 24? I know that sounds like a wild claim at first, but in this video I'm going to walk you through these things as best as I can. And this might just change your views about the end times, but that's okay. Let's dive in and I'll show you what I mean. You're probably wondering, do I believe in the rapture? And the answer is, well, depends on what you mean. I do believe we meet the Lord in the air and are caught up with him when he returns finally to establish a new creation and fully realize his kingdom. I do believe that. I just don't believe Matthew 24 particularly is really talking about this at all, at least not the way many Christians suppose. So I do believe the rapture and the final coming of Jesus to usher in new creation, like those are the exact same event. But here's the 9th misconception in this series of misconceptions we're addressing about the rapture and the end times in Matthew 24. The misconception goes like this. The apocalyptic signs, cosmic signs in the sky that Jesus is describing, they are referring to literal, visible events that must happen in our material world in an observable way that is exactly according to the details Jesus provides. And if you're like, what cosmic signs? Right here. He says, after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened. The moon will not give its light. And the stars, they will fall from the heaven. The powers of the heavens will be shaken. Like this is a cosmic shaking. This seems to be a spiritual realm kind of shaking. And then he talks about the sign of the Son of Man. But here's my response to this misconception. Not everything Jesus says is literal. And I don't think that's a cop-out. This kind of language that Jesus is employing wouldn't be new for his audience, and it wouldn't be foreign to the Old Testament. Remember, this is all relating to the timing of the Great Tribulation, which we've already discussed in a previous video, so go watch that. If you missed it, it'll be helpful. But very often, biblical authors will use cosmic language to describe national or localized events that aren't necessarily globally catastrophic, but it's catastrophic for those people. It's locally catastrophic for that nation, who's figuratively, you might say, having their lights put out. The Old Testament uses all of this same language Jesus is using and the imagery to describe judgment and destruction. The Old Testament uses that to describe what God is doing through enemy armies, which those armies are functioning as his instrument of judgment on specific nations and peoples, like Israel, like Babylon, like Assyria. And so it's very common in prophetic poetry and the apocalyptic imagery the prophets use to see this kind of language. And here's just a few examples. I'm not going to get into the exhaustive list. I don't believe I even have an exhaustive list, but I'm just going to give you a few examples of what I mean, because that's quite the claim, right? Remember, the sun being darkened, the moon not giving light, the stars falling from heaven. Like, if those are literal events, that kind of thing, in my opinion, if literally the cosmos is falling apart, that kind of thing can't happen multiple times. So if we see it happen in the Old Testament several times, you wonder, did those things literally happen? And just like with each time, the cosmos falls more apart, which is a possibility. Or is it just using cosmic language to make sense of the destruction and judgment coming upon a localized region and people? You got two options, so I'll give you that. Isaiah 13, though, it's describing how Babylon is about to be, eventually, is going to be destroyed by the armies God is sending against them, which is going to be the Medo-Persian Empire that takes over. So it says, the day of the Lord comes. It is cruel. It is with wrath and fierce anger to make the land a desolation. Remember the abomination of desolation in Matthew 24? It's going to destroy sinners from it. Watch. The stars of the heavens and their constellations will not give their light. Okay? The sun will be dark at its rising. The moon will not shed its light. I will punish the world for its evil. Pause. In context, Isaiah 13 is not talking about the world at large, but the world of Babylon, you might say. That empire. It's a very specific region and people that is in view. So their world is about to be punished as though their world cosmically is falling apart. The stars of the heavens and their constellations stop giving light. Did this literally happen? If you want to say Babylon being destroyed or overtaken by the Medo-Persian Empire involved, burning and fire and the smoke rising and kind of blocking the light of the sun, and it's as though it's put out and it's as though it went dark. If you want to literalize it in that sense, you're more than welcome to. But when I show you these other passages, that might not make as much sense, though it is a possibility. I don't believe it's probable. I don't believe that's what the prophets are specifically talking about. Isaiah 34, same language, but it's the nation of Edom. Now, the descendants of Esau are experiencing their own personal destruction and judgment like Babylon is said to experience one day. Well, Isaiah wants to let you know how that's going to look or how it's going to feel. He's framing it up in with cosmic language to let you know how severe this is. All the host of heaven shall rot away, which the host of heaven doesn't always, but can often refer to the stars. And the skies will roll up like a scroll, like the sky being folded up. That would be a pretty dramatic thing that would change the course of our world at large if it literally happened. You have that option, or this is metaphorical. It's figurative language. All their host shall fall as leaves fall from the vine, and like leaves falling from the fig tree. Which is interesting because in Matthew 24, right after saying these things, Jesus says, take note of the fig tree. It lets you know what season you're in, which I'll show you real quick because that just came to mind for me. Never made that connection. But he talks about how all those signs will appear, and then he says, hey, from the fig tree, learn its lesson. Like if its branch becomes tender, summer's near. In the same way, these things happening are an indication of what season you're in. Well, he says, for my sword has drunk its fill in the heavens. Whoa. Like this is a heavenly kind of destruction? Well, it might as well be. It descends for judgment on Edom, upon the people I've devoted to destruction. So sometimes it seems like, wow, this judgment is extended to the entire world at large. Other times it's clear, like, no, this is just for Edom. With Babylon, it said the whole world, but just referring to the nation and empire of Babylon. So Edom's about to be destroyed, and it's framed up in this cosmic kind of way, which seems kind of dramatic, but that's just the language of the prophets. That's the apocalyptic language they use and the figures of speech they choose to employ, like metaphors and analogies. And to us, it's like just say literal truth in a literal way. But we're approaching the Bible, which is an Eastern book, from a Western mindset. We have to step into the Bible on its terms and read it the way it's supposed to be, not try and conform it to our Westernized mindset. Jeremiah 4 is Babylon coming to destroy the southern kingdom of Judah. Jeremiah says, I looked on the earth and it was without form and void. Now, what does that sound like? That sounds like how Genesis 1 opens up to let you know the world in its decreated or uncreated state is without form and void. It is a kind of wild and waste. It's uninhabited and it is without form and structure. There's no form to it, and there's nothing that is filling it because it has no structure. So now there's a kind of decreation anticipated for Judah. and it's going to come through the Babylonian armies. It's been a long time coming, but the new edition of my book, Fruitful, is officially available in both paperback and digital version. It's perfect for small group discussion, church-wide discipleship, or even just your own personal faith. It lays out the clear gospel, your identity, your purpose, and God's process for your life. So grab your copy on the homepage of my website or sample the first chapter on Amazon. Or if you like reading on your devices, snag your digital copy on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or Apple iBooks. I believe it will absolutely bless you and strengthen your relationship with God. All right, let's get back to the video. And he says, and to the heavens they had no light. Remember, Genesis 1 opens. There was just darkness over the face of the waters. God spoke and said, let there be light. Right? And that's how God began to order and structure. I looked on the mountains, and behold, they were quaking, and all the hills moved to and fro. There was no man, there's no creatures. It's uninhabited. It's a wasteland. It's desolate. That's what happened to Judah over the three-phase Babylonian captivity and the destruction they brought over the course of three specific phases. For thus says the Lord, the whole land shall be a desolation, yet I will not make a full end. Whoa, you're not going to make a full end? But the heavens are dark, the earth is mourning. The earth? No. The land that's about to experience a desolation, which is the land of Judah in context, because the earth can be legitimately translated as land. The earth in our English, at least in Hebrew or Greek, it's not always referring to if you're a flat earther or not. It's not referring to our entire planet at large. That's how we use the word. That's not always how the biblical authors use the word. Very often they're not using it that way. So the land that's in view, that's about to be desolated, is Judah, and the heavens are being darkened. That sounds like what Jesus says about the signs in Matthew 24. The abomination of desolation, the land, but it's not a full end. So how is it absolutely annihilated to the point where you're like, it's like the cosmic balance of the universe is imploding and in on itself. Like it's just unfolding into chaos. How is that possible, yet the whole land is not fully destroyed? Because God has a remnant. And I think the same is true in Matthew 24. But here's another example. And I can give you example after example, but we don't have time. I want this to be a shorter video. You can watch my longer video on this later. Ezekiel 32, 7 through 8. Talking about God bringing judgment against Egypt. So we have Edom, we have Judah, we have Babylon, and now we have Egypt. Again, these are regions, these are nations, individual peoples that are in mind. But it's framed up as almost this, you might think and assume it's a worldwide phenomenon. No, just their world. The light of their world is being put out. It's as though their individual universe is crumbling and descending into a decreated state. Ezekiel 32, verse 7, when I blot you out, I'll cover the heavens. Again, being darkened, the stars, and make their stars dark. I'll cover the sun with a cloud. So you might say this is another way of saying the stars fall from heaven, okay? They're not there. They're given, God gives the stars in Genesis for signs and for seasons and for light, along with the sun and the moon, right? Not only for light, the sun and the moon are enough, but the stars do add some light. And so they have function. They're part of God's order and structure in the world. So if they are darkened, they are not playing their role to give signs for seasons. And if the sun and moon are being darkened, they're not. It's decreation language. I get excited about this because I just want people to see it. The moon won't give its light. All the bright lights of heaven, stars, sun, moon, just pick your celestial body. I will make dark over you. Notice, over you. Well, hold on. How can the sun and the moon go dark just for one group of people? And I'll put darkness on your land? Well, one way to think about this, and this is, again, God is bringing judgment against Egypt. Did he do this before? He did with Moses. If you remember, there was light for Israel, and there was darkness upon the land of Egypt. So decreation, judgment, like this is all the language. So is Jesus talking about judgment that's coming upon a localized region at a specific time for a specific people through specific armies? That's consistently how we see the language employed in the Old Testament. I don't know why Jesus would go rogue and suddenly start doing something that is out of line with what we see in the Old Testament. So this is one way to understand how the stars are falling from heaven. They're not giving light. But there's another option for the stars falling from heaven. And if you're like, what do you mean? Well, back to Matthew 24, and we'll get out of here. The stars falling from heaven, maybe another way to understand that is the falling of the stars doesn't necessarily have to be making the same point that the sun and moon being darkened are. It's very possible that, the sun and moon being darkened equals decreation, light being put out for that nation, kind of like in Genesis 1. But maybe the stars falling from heaven refers to the people of God, being persecuted and destroyed or killed. Many times in Scripture, stars refer to people, often the people of God. Genesis 15, verse 5 and 6, 13 through 16, Genesis 26, 4, Genesis 22, 17, Exodus 23, Deuteronomy 1, Deuteronomy 10, Deuteronomy 28, Nehemiah 9, Hebrews 11. All those passages refer to Israel being as numerous as the stars of heaven. So they are like stars in their number. So they're numerically compared to the celestial bodies. In Daniel 8, verse 10, we have Antiochus Epiphanes throwing down or casting down the Israelites, who are referred to as stars, and they're being killed. Daniel 12, verse 3, the wise or the righteous are said to shine like the stars above. They're exalted, right? Genesis 37, 9, Joseph's dream, where he and his family are like stars. The stars or celestial bodies represent him and his family. Revelation 1 links stars to the representative or angel of each church. And then in Revelation, there's many images of stars falling associated with judgment. So either the stars are their own separate idea, which is possible, or it's just all these different images, the sun being darkened, the moon not giving light, the stars falling from heaven, the powers of the heavens being shaken. There are all 4 different ways of saying the same thing. That this is a cosmic way of saying, hey, a specific people or nation or generation is descending into decreation. God is bringing decreation onto them. Anti-creation is happening. And they're falling into that chaos where death is only possible. And judgment is coming their way, right, through a specific army. Babylon, the Persians, the Assyrians, Israelites, or the Romans. So, in conclusion, are the sun and the moon literally going to be put out as some kind of sign of the end of the world and the last human generation? Are stars literally falling from heaven in Matthew 24? No. I'm not convinced that's what's happening. That would be very inconsistent with the way the prophetic language, that same prophetic language, is employed in the Old Testament. But rather, what we have is the specific nation God is judging and bringing destruction on. It is as though it's only happening for them, similar again to Egypt having darkness over them while Israel had light. So, a question people might ask me is, well, could it be that in the final generation of humanity, we see crazy cosmic signs like this that testify to the season we're in, like the sun being eclipsed and blood moons and the wonders in the sky and different lunar eclipses? Could that indicate the end of humanity? Sure, I'm absolutely open to that. I'm just not convinced in any way, shape, or form Matthew 24 is referring to that or describing that in any way when you read it in context. And I know many will disagree with me. It's fine. Share your disagreements lovingly and respectfully in the comments. I want to hear them. I want to grow and be open to different views. I'm just not convinced thus far. And remember that end times and eschatology is not ultimate. God's not going to judge you on the basis of that, and you shouldn't judge others on the basis of their views. Like, as believers, we believe Jesus is coming back to usher in new creation and the eternal kingdom once and for all, but the logistics and the timing of that, we're all making sense of it a bit differently. So that's why in the next video, we will look at another one of the biggest myths about Matthew 24, which is the idea that when Jesus describes famines and natural disasters and incredible political unrest, unlike we've ever seen, he's talking about the end of the world and what leads up to it. So if that's the case, how does that affect our understanding of the rapture, the end times, and Matthew 24. You'll have to watch the next video to find out. So thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Hey, if you're not a monthly supporter yet of this ministry, here's why you'll want to become one today. You get access to exclusive teachings every week. Right now, I'm going through Genesis, looking at the Hebrew and drawing out deeper insights. You'll get access to all of my biblical parallel worksheets. And there are other benefits for higher tiers, like unlimited access to all of my sermon notes, free access to paid Bible courses, and even early access to weekly Bible teachings. So go check that out on the website, and thank you for supporting this ministry to help us teach people how to read the Bible so they can live and teach it for themselves. I'll see you in the next video.